That's Hyde Police Headquarters, the center of one of the biggest ever police search operations in this country. And it's collecting evidence which might confirm the killings of young children up on the Pennine Moors about 7 or 8 miles from here.
Could this be the last search for Keith Bennett? Once again, forensic officers are combing through the earth of this infamous moor. They are looking for 12-year-old Keith, who went missing in 1964. He is the only victim of Myra Hindley and Ian Brady, who has never been found.
The series of brutal murders, which saw the two exclusively target children, earned these two the nickname the most hated couple in England.
The area where they assaulted, murdered and buried these children is known as Saddleworth Moor.
Even as a child, Ian Brady was regarded as a secretive outsider. Born in one of the roughest slums in Glasgow, he grew up with an interest in sadism, but after meeting Myra Hindley, that escalated.
Often what's motivating the killer couple is something that psychologists call a folie à deux, literally a madness shared by two.
Their killing began with 16-year-old Pauline Reed, lured into Hindley's car and taken to the moor to meet Brady. Pauline was murdered and buried there.
She's not suffering now. Nobody can hurt her now. Feel her that close now, you see, so that seems to put me up a lot. I feel her so close to me. I miss her very much, I still do.
Next came 12-year-old John Kilbride, a clever young man, good at football. John Kilbride had been lured into Myra Hindley's van and driven to the moor. His body would not be found for another 2 years. He'd been sexually assaulted and strangled.
It wasn't a good time, that 2 years. It was a big relief when he was found.
10-year-old Leslie Ann Downey's voice was recorded by Brady as she begged in vain for her life. When he and Hindley finally came to court, such details provoked an outrage.
I have always been implacably opposed to capital punishment, but I would have made an exception in the cases of these two.
Saddleworth Moor has been the focus of searches for Keith over the last nearly 6 decades. Brady was even brought onto the moors to show officers the graves of his victims. The bodies of 3 of them were discovered, but neither Brady or Hindley would say where Keith Bennett was buried before they died. His mother, Winnie, fought tirelessly to find her son.
I will never give up, never in a month of Sunday. If it takes me to my grave, I'll carry on till then.
Before she passed away 10 years ago, never knowing where her child was hidden.
Hindley, who said that she had a sore throat, gave her evidence in a low, husky voice. She said that she had loved Brady and still loved him.
After 5 decades, the question as to where he buried the body of 12-year-old Keith Bennett remains. If his poor health is now as bad as he suggests, will Brady go to his grave without revealing that last sad secret?
On today's episode, we are going to be examining one of the most notorious murder sprees in British history, the Moors murders perpetrated by Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. This is one of the most disturbing, one of the darkest stories that we've ever covered here on this channel, and our visit to the moors at the end of the video revealed some dark hidden truths about this entire affair. For decades now, the murders have been so notorious in Britain that everybody knows the story. Everybody knows the number of victims. There seems to be some sort of a conclusion. But in this video, we're going to talk about additional victims that could possibly have been attributed to the 2 killers. We're going to talk about bodies that were never discovered and discuss some of the more mysterious elements of this crime spree that is oftentimes glossed over or unreported upon by major news media. But without further ado, I want to warn you guys, this is a very sad, dark, and twisted story, and the footage we captured is horrifying, so viewer and listener discretion is advised. First, we have to talk about the story. Between 1963 and 1965, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley orchestrated a series of murders in the Manchester, England area that became known infamously as the Moors murders. Their victims, Pauline Reed, John Kilbride, Keith Bennett, Leslie Ann Downey, and Edward Evans, were aged between 10 and 17 years old, with at least 4 of the victims suffering sexual assaults before they were murdered. The chosen burial ground for the killers was a remote, foggy moor in the middle of nowhere near Manchester, named Saddleworth Moor, a desolate place where the dead go to die. While 2 victims' bodies were uncovered in the moor in 1965, the third body wasn't discovered until about 2 decades later in the year 1987. And despite numerous searches, young Keith Bennett's remains remain missing and are presumed to be buried somewhere out on that desolate moor. That's right, to this day, at least one victim's body has never been found that is attributed to Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, the killer couple. No one knows where his final resting place is, but today we're going to discuss some theories. Initially convicted for the murders of Kilbride, Downey, and Evans, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley were eventually sentenced to life imprisonment. The case reopened in 1985 when Ian Brady confessed to killing Pauline Reed and Keith Bennett, prompting Myra Hindley to end her claims of innocence in 1987 and admit that she took part in all 5 of the brutal murders. Both killers were later escorted to Saddleworth Moor to assist in locating additional graves, but sadly, like I said, Keith Bennett's body has never been found. Myra Hindley, labeled the most evil woman in Britain by the press, repeatedly argued for her release, claiming she was rehabilitated, she had changed, she deserved to be out in the general public. Her pleas, though, were denied, and she died in 2002 at age 60 after 36 years behind bars. Ian Brady, formerly declared a psychopath in 1985, spent the rest of his life in Ashworth Hospital, a mental facility where he expressed a strong desire to die. He passed away in 2017 at the age of 79, having been incarcerated for 51 years. Experts like forensic psychiatrist Malcolm McCulloch have described the crimes as the result of an unfortunate chain of events, while the trial judge condemned the pair as 2 sadistic killers of the utmost depravity. Their crimes drew widespread global attention and remain a notorious chapter in British criminal history. So first, let's talk about the killers themselves. Ian Brady, originally named Ian Duncan Stewart, was born on January 2nd, 1938, in the Gorbals region of Glasgow to Margaret Peggy Stewart, an unmarried waitress. Ian's father was never identified, though his mother claimed he was a newspaper reporter who died shortly before Ian's birth. Unable to support her son, Peggy entrusted Ian's care to Mary and John Sloan, a local couple with 4 children. Although he was raised as Ian Sloan, Peggy, Ian's mother, remained inside of his life, visiting him regularly, paying him visits, and still showing affection and love for her child. As a kid, Ian Brady showed an early interest in the outdoors, particularly after a visit to Loch Lomond at age 9. Soon after, his family moved to a council estate in Pollock. Allegations of animal cruelty emerged during his childhood, with reports eventually suggesting that Ian tortured and killed animals, though Ian denied these claims. His disturbing behaviors worsened throughout his teenage years at the Shawlands Academy, where he was known for delinquency, and he constantly committed crimes, including breaking into houses, which led to appearances in juvenile court. At age 15, Ian Brady left school and held a few brief jobs, including a stint as a shipyard tea-boy and a butcher's messenger. A relationship with a girl ended when Ian Brady threatened her with a knife, an incident that led to further legal trouble. Facing 9 charges, Ian was placed on probation on the condition that he live with his mother, who had relocated to Manchester. By then, Peggy had married Patrick Brady, and Ian adopted his stepfather's surname. Patrick helped him secure a job at Smithfield Market, but Ian's theft from the market led to a 3-month stint in Strangeways prison. And you can see here early on there's a pattern in Ian Brady's life. He has contempt for the law, he loves breaking the law, and he listens to nobody. No authority was able to hold him down. Ian's 2 subsequent years in Borstal training were marked by disciplinary issues, including being transferred to a tougher facility in Hull after being caught drinking underage. Upon his release in 1957, Ian struggled to maintain steady work, eventually teaching himself bookkeeping to improve his prospects. In 1959, he secured a clerical position at Millward's Merchandising, a chemical distribution company in Gorton. Colleagues described him as quiet and punctual, but prone to irritability. In his personal life, Ian displayed a fascination with Nazi ideology, reading Mein Kampf and literature on wartime atrocities. He seemed to be especially interested in the and the genocides and torture and war crimes committed by these regimes. He also rode a motorcycle, often exploring the Pennines in his free time. That's the area where Saddleworth Moor is. So as you can see, Ian Brady was a troubled kid who came from a somewhat, supportive, loving, normal home. But when he was younger, he was torturing animals, he was breaking the law, he wasn't listening to anybody, and he was exhibiting these red flags. But before we move on, we have to talk about the other half of the killer couple, the most hated woman in Britain, Myra Hindley. Myra Hindley was born on July 23, 1942 in Crumpstall, Manchester, to Nellie and Bob Hindley. She grew up in Gorton, a working-class neighborhood known for its poor living conditions. Her father, a violent alcoholic and former soldier who had served in North Africa, Cyprus, and Italy during World War II, was known for his tough, no-bullshit demeanor. Myra's home life was challenging, sharing a cramped space with her parents until her younger sister Maureen's birth in 1946 made the situation worse. At age 5, Myra Hindley moved in with her grandmother nearby. Myra Hindley's father expected her to be tough and taught her how to fight. This mindset of fight or die was ingrained early in Myra's mind. At just 8 years old, she retaliated against a boy who scratched her face, knocking him down under her father's encouragement. This incident, which she later referred to as her first victory, reflected the violent environment both at home and outside that Myra Hindley was raised in. Forensic psychiatrist Malcolm McCulloch suggested that this upbringing shaped Myra Hindley's perception of violence and its role in relationships. She grew up loving violence. It was a part of her life, and it would continue to be a part of her life up until the day she was eventually arrested for some of the most heinous crimes in British history. A significant emotional event in Myra's life occurred in 1957 when her friend Michael Higgins drowned in a local reservoir. Myra, who declined Michael's invitation to go out swimming that day, was devastated and blamed herself. She thought if only she was there swimming with him, she would have been able to save his life. Feeling horrible, she organized a collection for a funeral wreath, and the experience deepened her connection to the Roman Catholic Church, where she had been baptized as an infant. Following Michael's funeral, Myra pursued religious instruction and received her first official communion in 1958, taking the confirmation name Veronica. Myra then began working as a junior clerk at an electrical engineering firm, where she was well liked, even receiving support from colleagues when she lost her first paycheck. At 17, she briefly became engaged but ended the relationship, feeling her fiancé lacked maturity and ambition. She also took judo lessons, although her reluctance to release holds made her an unpopular partner. Myra later worked at an engineering company in Gorton, but was dismissed after 6 months for absenteeism. These formative experiences, marked by hardship, violence, and personal loss, set the stage for Myra's later infamy and prudish nature. Hey, look at that. Look at that. Just got a plaque for 100,000 on Conspiracy Files. That's awesome. At 18, Myra Hindley began working as a typist at Millwards in January of 1961, where she quickly became infatuated with someone she met on the job, Ian Brady. Myra kept a diary detailing her fascination with Ian, despite dating other men at the time. Their first conversation took place in late July of 1961, but it wasn't until December 22nd